Hey there, it's Sam, and I'm here with Dr. Malini Iyer, my friend and excellent Vedic astrologer herself. We're going to be talking about Diwali upcoming in, I don't even know the exact date. I think it's November 12th, I think, here in the US,
Mhm.
I believe. And it's a great celebration, the Festival of Light. We're going to talk about it relative to the astrology because all of the Indian holidays, holy days, are connected to the astrology, not just Gregorian calendar dates. It's when sun and moon come together and different tithis, lunar phases. And so we're going to be talking about that. Welcome, Dr. Malini Iyer. Great to see you again and to share some space with you. Thank you for doing this for us today.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me. And thank you for really, a lot of people don't realize, but Sam is in our contemporary world, one of the pioneers who started to make these connections between astrology and festivals, right? So thank you for doing that so we can actually have this conversation. You are one of the only people I've really heard talk about this very early on when I started to learn from you. And Diwali was the very first festival you actually showed me. You were like, you know, um, they say a good teacher is somebody who gives you the food to eat, and a great teacher is one who teaches you to catch, who actually turns on the light bulb in your head. And that's what Sam did uh, for me. And then I could start to connect other festivals too. So thank you, Sam, for actually doing this and creating this platform to, you know, talk about festivals and how they are really, they have a deeper meaning in our lives.
Yeah, well, you're certainly welcome. It's endlessly fascinating, and it's how you can see that astrology is real. It's and how the Indians were always connected to the cosmology, whether we know it or not. And most people don't know. They're just like, oh, we'll do this that day. What day is
Mhm.
it? And don't understand that it's specific times of the year, and different lunar phases that are all personified by the deities that are being referenced. So it's not just that it's, of course, a Diwali is Rama and Sita on their way back from exile and all of this. So again, the holidays themselves correspond with the deities, Mahashivaratri, that particular moment in time each year is the night for Shiva. And, Guru Purnima is that full moon at that time. There's a reason it's that one, not the other
Mhm.
11 full moons. So that's what got me endlessly fascinated by it. And Molly put this together for us, and she's going to take us through some of this here, especially how to really celebrate these festivals. Because as much as I've done this astrology part, I'm not Indian, so I obviously very much appreciate that Molly has grown up in that culture, and she's having grown up in the culture, immersed in the culture, and then gone back and learned all of these things again where I started, because I started at a certain place, but Molly has a whole lived experience in it, having going through these festivals that I don't have. So I'm always like, come talk about this because I actually want to learn too. I didn't grow up, in Bombay or whatever, actually doing these things. So Molly really also really combines the best of both worlds as someone who has totally lived that culture and now immersed in the study of astrology and making these connections. So I'm very glad you're going to take us through this today.
Thank you, Sam. So, what you see on the screen is actually from a course that Sam conceived about this course, and the two of us taught it about 2 years ago. It's called Indian Astrology and Mythological Stories and Festivals and How They Come Together. I think it's still available on Sam's website. I think so, right? Yeah. It's a great course. It really gets you thinking. Please go ahead and sign up for it, or at least take a look at it. So,
I'll
what
drop
we're
a link.
talking,
It's
yeah,
astrologyofstories.com, I think, is the actual link, but I'll definitely drop a link because it's really a great way to do exactly what I just said and actually go through each year and see, oh, now here we are at this point in the year. That's why we're doing this celebration. So anyway, yeah.
yeah. So what you're looking at the screen is when Diwali happens, and it's a tithi. Again, tithi is a phase of the moon. It's an angular phase of the moon that's created by both the sun and the moon. It's the distance between the sun and the moon, right? So when you see K there, K15, K13, K14, K really means Krishna Paksha. It's the uh, waning phase of the moon where the moon is becoming darker and darker. So K15 is Amavasya. It's when the moon is completely dark. It's the new moon in the month of Kartik when we celebrate Diwali. And Diwali has different ways of being celebrated throughout the country that speaks to the diversity of India itself. The main day of Diwali in throughout the country is that K15, where I've written Lakshmi Puja, where you invite Lakshmi back in to your home. That's the biggest celebration. That's the day when lights are lit. And I'm a South Indian, so as a South Indian, we would wake up really early in the morning and burst firecrackers, light oil lamps. But really, throughout, especially northern and western India, the celebration starts on the Treyo. Dashi Treyo means three, Dashi means 10, so 10 plus 3 is 13. So that Krishna Paksh 13 on Dhanteras. And it's called Dhanteras, and we'll go through the story because Dhanvantari, uh, the god of Ayurveda, the lord of Ayurveda who brought Ayurveda to the world, emerged from the Milky Ocean, and there's an elaborate story on that. And we'll get to that in a second. So we start the celebration in northern parts of the country and western parts of the country on K13, and then go through it. And it's a 5 day celebration, and it ends on the Shukla Paksha. Shukla is waxing. So Shukla is the moon getting, Shukla really means white, right? So the moon getting whiter and whiter, brighter and brighter. So the second tithi after the new moon. And it happens specifically at that time of the year in the month of Kartik, because the sun is in the sign of Libra and the moon is in the sign of Libra, about to enter the sign of Scorpio. And I think Sam explains this really beautifully. The sun, its dignity in Libra, and the moon, its dignity in towards the end of Libra and Scorpio, and why that lighting of that lamp is so important. Sam, do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a time. The other ones, though, too, we have the. I'm also interested, just real quick, about the K14 and the Lakshmi Puja. Are they part of this as well? Like um, on the K14 and 15,
Hmm.
before we have before we have the so-called New Year, and the S1, um, which is the beginning of Diwali.
Yes. So the whole concept of Diwali is victory of light over darkness.
Right.
And you really feel like it comes and fall in the northern hemisphere. You're feeling um, the the shorter days. So it comes at a point in time where you're already feeling the heaviness of the tamasic nature, or the heaviness of the dark energies, right? The darkness, even just having less light. So there are a lot of stories that takes place around here which talk about the victory of light over darkness. So the K14, Narka Chaturdashi, Chatur meaning 4, Dashi means 10. So Chatur 14, K14, the night before actual Diwali or Lakshmi Puja, is when Krishna kills an asura called Narkasura. And that's why it's called Narka Chaturdashi. It's not celebrated all over the country, but it's definitely celebrated in the western parts of the country. Especially Dwarka was in the west, right? It was in Gujarat. And there is a whole archaeological excavation happening right now with Dwarka. And there is archaeological evidence that it was in the west. So the western part of the country celebrates Narka Chaturdashi because that's for them the darkest day. And then it's Lakshmi Puja. The next day they start to invite Lakshmi. And that's like K14 and K15, like going from the moon is so burnt up in the sun's it's combust, right? It's close to the sun, it's combust. um and there is just absolutely no lights. That K14 into K15 feels very, very heavy. And then S1, which is the Shukla Paksh first tithi, is when everything new begins. It's the new year, it's the welcoming of the new. So it is going into the darkness and then on the other side emerging back into the light. And that all
Right.
that is captured into the stories and the
And
events
so
that
there's a
happen around.
corresponding story, even that's not part of the Diwali or whatever, but right before it, because again, this is a incarnation of Ram. That's it.
Hmm.
The story of Diwali is, Ram and Sita coming back, and it's that Lord Rama supposedly kills Ravana on like Vijayadashmi or around there, like the previous month, right?
Yes, so in the previous month, and we all finished celebrating Navratri, right? Through the 9 nights of Navratri, Ram, this is the story that happens when Ram is in exile, and his wife, his beloved wife Sita. So Ram is the incarnation of Vishnu, and Sita is the incarnation of Lakshmi. And this is important to remember. Um, Sita gets abducted by Ravana, and Ravana is the king of Lanka. So Ram takes an arduous journey. He has no army. He doesn't know where she is, how to find her. He employs the tribes, the jungle people, the Vanars, and forms an army of these regular people who don't even know how to use weapons, right? They use like boulders and trees and stuff like that too. It's really like the tribes that live in the forest. Even today, the tribal people in India are undisturbed, their lands are undisturbed, right? So it's those kind of people who come to help Ram, and then they build a bridge from, and this is in Rameshwaram, from the southern point of India to Lanka, to cross the ocean, which is also an impossible task at that point in time. And then Ram takes those 9 days to fight Ravan through the Navratri. And on the 10th day, he finally kills Ravan. And Ravan is fighting Ravan is no joke. Was the he was the fiercest person around then. His name Ravan meaning when he roars, it is like it's a roar that will shake you, right? He's fiercest, he's extremely intelligent, he has all kinds of siddhis, and siddhis are these special powers that he has the power to do sadhana and tapasya, and he had gained so many skills that was almost an impossible task for Ram to kill. And throughout those 9 days, it was not easy. It was not like Ram was like feeling victorious. He was feeling defeated every single day and feeling like a loser. Think about an incarnation of God himself feeling like a loser through 9 nights, and had to like really tap into Shakti and the divine energy and the divine mother energy. And on the 10th day, he's finally successful in killing Ravana. And he understands, he has killed a great person. Ravana has several flaws, but also a lot of greatness in him. And so, and then after that, he sets on his journey back to Ayodhya. It also coincides with the time he was put in exile. He was put in exile for 14 years. And by then, his time is up. So after he kills Ravana, rescues his wife, he sets on the journey back to Ayodhya, and it takes him about that 20 days, right? A
And
little
this
over a
is the time
fortnight.
that we're living now. Like this is the time
Hmm.
we're living now from Vijayadashmi, which was on the 10th lunar day of the waxing moon, which was about 5 days before we just had this lunar eclipse, as I'm doing this in
Hmm.
2022.
Hmm.
So from that Vijayadashmi, those of you who've been tracking Navratri, from the Vijayadashmi, which is also it's the mother's great victory over the Mahishasura, but there's a parallel story of Rama's victory over Ravana. And Ravana was like the
Hmm.
most powerful asura. They call them asuras, but again, as Malini said, he's a very revered and respected because of all these siddhis and these powers. And it's actually also a play between Shiva and Vishnu also on another level. He was actually like a like a form of Shiva, or at least got the boons from Shiva and the power. And so they played this game as well.
Mhm.
with between Shiva and Vishnu. So there's a lot of symbolism on that level between the battle between Rama and Ravana.
Mhm.
Um, and in but the thing is that this journey now, after we just had this eclipse, but that full moon that happens right before at the after the 9 nights of the Divine Mother, that full moon, and now this waning phase that we've been in since we had the lunar eclipse, and now the moon is waning and getting darker and darker and darker. That's when Rama and Sita are journeying back home. They're all coming back
Mhm.
home now. This is the journey back home as the moon is waning.
Mhm.
And then that culminates on the final darkest days,
Yeah.
like Molly just talked about, K13 and then K14, where there's a parallel story in Srimad Bhagavatam of Krishna killing the um
Nargasur.
yeah, Narkasur. Um I was thinking it was Makara, but it's not similar. But killing the demon right before this darkest time. Right now, as I'm recording this, we're on it's Ashtami, I think, today, or Saptami, one of them. It's like the 7th day. And so
Mhm.
again, this is the 7th day of the waning moon. I'm recording this now on Friday, November 3rd. It's going to be uploaded a little bit later, but you have the 7th day of the waning moon, then the 8th day, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. And then that's these days here as the moon keeps getting darker and darker in the sky. And then eventually it's totally dark. This is what happens on Amavasya. When it says it's dark, it's literally that the moon disappears. You don't see it. It's burnt up in the sun. And like Malini was saying before, what happens astrologically is the sun is debilitated in the sign of Libra at its
Mhm.
weakest point, and the moon is also very close to its debilitated point, where it's debilitated in very early Scorpio. So the moon is
Mhm.
also within a day or so of its deepest debilitation also. So it's this, and the other magnitude of weakness for the moon is that it's dark. So there are two magnitudes of strength really for the moon. One is its brightness. So when it's bright in any context, it's a bala, or a source of strength. So when it's dark, it's a source of weakness. And when it's in Scorpio or closer to Scorpio it gets, it's also weak. Um, this is why when it's bright, even like if it's bright and in Scorpio, then there's a major source of strength still there because of its magnitude, because of its brightness. But here the moon is at its weakest. It's not only as dark as it can be on Diwali, but it's as close to its debilitation, and it's waning, which is the other point. Because it's waning, it's not waxing. It hasn't started to increase yet.
Mhm.
So this is why we're, and so what this means is what we do on this festival is we intentionally bring light. We intentionally bring the light. You would say, well, why are we bringing the light when it's already so weak? Well, that's why. Because it's
Yeah.
weak. When it's at its weakest, we have to intentionally do it. This is why all of the themes around the Ramayana and around Sita and things like tapas and sacrifice, and even Sita being immolated in fire, and there's the whole story of the trial of Rama to get Sita back, and even things like the divine feminine and the empowered feminine, and literally things like yogic tapas, which is sacrifice and sort of penance, and having your karmas burned up and purified in the fire of truth. Very powerful. And last thing I'll say, then we'll bring Malini in, but even the literal astrology here, Rama is an incarnation of the sun, right? And
Mhm.
Ravana is an incarnation of Saturn. So even in this section of the zodiac, you have Rama, who is an incarnation of the sun, and Sita, who is an incarnation of the moon. Both of them are weak here. So
Mhm.
we have to support them after just having defeated this monstrous power, Ravana, who Saturn is strongest here.
Yes.
So Saturn is exalted in Libra, where Jupiter is debilitated. But yet, even though Jupiter is debilitated, the glorious sun still was victorious. And his wife, even though she was tortured and mistreated, which is an incarnation of the moon, showing how both the sun and the moon are weak here. But even in their weakness, through their tapas and their energy and their discipline and focus, and especially the assistance of the great hero of the Ramayana, which is Hanuman, you have this victory. Hanuman is an incarnation of Mars and the courage to defend the kingdom. And that's also why the biggest remedy, you would say, and the thing to really be doing around Diwali has to do with like the Hanuman Chalisa. And this is why it's such a sacred practice to do when people have debilitated moon or other kinds of things. Also to like appease problems with Saturn, they say to say the Hanuman Chalisa, because in the Ramayana it was actually Hanuman who was he's an incarnation of Mars, which shows the power of discipline and yogic courage. That's what Hanuman is. That's what Mars is astrologically. So when we said at the beginning that all these things have an astrological correlation, whether you know it or not, this is what we mean. This story is rich in all of the symbolism. The sun and moon debilitated, Saturn is really powerful, but through tapas and discipline and devotion and things like yoga and breath and all the stuff that Hanuman indicates, Rama and Sita were able to be victorious anyway. But it's a dark path home. And because it's a dark path after a long fought victory, we light the lamp to guide him home on Diwali. The final steps of the journey, of the darkest journey home, is lit with those lamps. So this is a kind of, combination of, correlation of the astrology, the story, and it even has a prelude in the previous month with Navratri. So there's a connection between Navratri, Vijayadashmi, and the victory of the goddess. It runs parallel to the victory of Rama. And then the full moon, and then as the moon is waning during this Krishna Paksha, this is Rama and Sita's journey home with the final steps lit by the lamps. So Malini, you pick it up from there.
So it is said that it was so dark when they were journeying back home that the citizens of Ayodhya, that's the kingdom Ram was going to inherit, was that the citizens lit the entire path back home with lamps, oil lamps, right? So he could know. He was flying on it's called a Pushpak Viman. So it's a flying object. He was flying back home by the time he's entering Ayodhya, it's pitch black outside, and they light these lamps for him to come. And we have to also remember, and I love this when Sam explains why the sun is debilitated in Libra, which is, if you think about the sun, it is exalted in the sign of Aries, where you're reigning in your power and your word is the ultimate. You rule the kingdom, right? You are the ultimate source of direction in the kingdom. But this is also the time when Ram was coronated as the king. He comes back and he's coronated as the king. And he's coronated as the king when the sun is debilitated and the moon is debilitated. And the sun is debilitated in Libra because this power is dispersed with the people. So it's like how democracy works. One person does not have the ultimate say. The sun does not have the ultimate say. You have to listen to what the people are saying and take their opinions into consideration before you make any decision. And that's what happens, because when they have to Ram listens to, and this was a practice Ram followed as a king. He would have these people who would perform in the court, and it's not just his ministers. He would just interact with the commoners who would come to the court and just engage with him and listen to what their stories are. And the things that came up were, people didn't believe that Sita was chaste. She was untouched by Ravan, and they didn't believe that she was pure, and they didn't believe that Ravan didn't rape her, or she didn't have relationships with him. And he took it upon himself to ensure that the king and the administration is above suspicion. So he was subjected to popular opinion, people's opinion, and had to send his wife back into exile, right? He never married again. He never loved anybody other than Sita as a partner. But that's the story. That's the muhurata at which he became the king, where when the sun is in Libra and you're subjected, your power is dispersed. So you're subjected to other people's opinions to actually rule, to actually execute your duties in life. Sun is amazing at executing duties in life. If you think about the sun in the sky, it gives light without asking anything in return. But then if you're subjected to other people's opinions, it really disperses your power. So that's why the sun is debilitated. And then the moon being debilitated, which is Sita, is also, she was never comfortable. See, the moon is debilitated in actually the very first degrees of Scorpio. And in Scorpio, the moon is not comfortable. It's never enjoys comfort. It's always subjected to suspicion, emotional probing. And in this case, Tita was subjected to that from the people and had to live through the consequences of that, as against where the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus, where you can easily enjoy the comforts and pleasures of life, right? So it's where moon loves to be, because it's comfortable and there is no emotional probing, so to say, to the extent that it happens in Scorpio. So that was the chart of their coronation, which is the sun in Libra and the moon in Scorpio. Like that was the chart of their coronation, and they lived through that. We can see it through astrology, where Ram could not reign in all his powers and be like, my word is the last word and this is how I rule because I'm God incarnate himself, right? That was not the case. He was subjected to popular opinion. And I think that we need to remember that as well. um
That's great
do you want to?
nuance. Yeah, yeah. Because then his kingdom changed after that, and it wasn't like this again. This confident vision. The kingdom had then been corrupted, and again, there's a lot of ways that this can play out, and we can see these stories very much in the modern era. It's very much a political story as well. Politics
Mhm.
of, however you want to look at it. I mean, there's so many different ways to see how, these stories, these Indian stories, are so rich in symbolism and in metaphor, and we think they're outdated, but you can apply these same things to what are happening now. Look at what's been happening in the world even since we had this
Mhm.
eclipse, and these last couple weeks, even since we had and I mean the eclipse that started back in the one that happened what was it, October 14th.
14th.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about the solar eclipse, the first
Mhm.
solar eclipse, right?
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
it was like, that's really because it now again, this is a separate thing because we're talking about an eclipse now, but Diwali happens every year whether there's an eclipse or not, right? So but
Mhm.
you're having this intense kind of story and drama that plays out every year around this time. And one of the things astrologically about it as well, and this is what we talked about in the course, is again, every year the sun comes around to this part of the orbit at the at where we have that new moon, usually in Virgo Rashi, is where we have the Navratri. That's
Yeah.
the new moon in Virgo starts that. And again, we even worship the new moon in Virgo. We have like the Kanya Kamari, Kanya, the young girl, is worshipped during this time as an emanation of the Divine Mother and the Divine Mother's victory over death and the Mahishasura, the buffalo demon. And then on the 10th night, we celebrate her victory. Again, like I just said, this parallel course runs between Rama, while we're celebrating that, the other story in the background is running that's happening in the Ramayana, and we see that then on the next new moon. And again, these new moons are how these cycles happen. It's not Gregorian calendar dates. We never know exactly what the date's going to be because it's when the sun and moon line up in
Mhm.
that month. And again, the month is related to the zodiac sign. This is why we have 12 zodiac signs, because we have on average 12 lunation cycles and in each sign each year. So we know when the lunation is going to happen each year. That's why there are 12 calendar months and also zodiac signs. So again, the new moon in Virgo starts Navratri, in the celebration of the Divine Mother, then we come around after the full moon. Then we're starting to transition into Rama and Sita's journey home as it gets darker and darker. Now we're getting into a place where now the sun and moon are at its darkest. And that's where we're at now. So again, we can predict this every year because it's actually the Earth going around the sun. The sun isn't moving, it's at the center. So every year when the Earth going around the sun in its orbit, when we see the stars of Virgo behind the sun, we see the signs of Libra. And by the way, it also portends the next sign, which is Scorpio, which comes after. So it portends this time of year, and it's in the northern hemisphere, because India is above the equator, especially in the places where this was taking place. And it's as we're getting into those fall and winter months, it portends these, quote, darker days ahead. We see, so we have to fortify. We're fortifying ourselves on Diwali because sun and moon are dark and there's more darkness coming. So let's bring the light. And this story is a metaphor for our spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Bring the light. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Beautifully said, Sam.
Molly, anything else you wanted to add here?
The last thing I would have had, and it's a nuance too, is about Dhanvantri, which is so the Trayodashi, the Krishna Trayodashi that happens is the day actually Dhanvantri was emerged from the Samudra Manthan. So it was a churning of the Milky Ocean, and the Asuras and the Devas, Suras and Asuras. Suras are the beings with light. Asuras are the beings without light. Actually, that's the best way to understand them. We call them gods and demons, but really it's light carrying beings and non light carrying beings. They were churning the Milky Ocean, which is also a metaphor for your mind. To get the elixir of immortality, right? And on that Krishna Trayodashi, right before Diwali, the 13th Tithi, is when Dhanvantri emerges from the ocean with a pot holding that elixir, that Amrita of immortality, and the knowledge of Ayurveda in one hand, the book of Ayurveda. In this picture, he's shown with herbs indicating Ayurveda, but also in some retellings of the tale, he's holding a leech because in ancient India, leech was a way to suck out like poisonous blood and stuff like that from your body. Um, so that happens on this day, and a lot of people, and I'm bringing this out for a reason because a lot of people will use Dhanteras because the word dhan or wealth is associated with it. They use Dhanteras to just go out and mindlessly buy gold, and it is actually a day to remember how abundant your life is, not just in terms of wealth, but in terms of healing, in the terms of health, in terms of the gifts you have gotten from the universe, because that's the day you got the gift of immortality from the universe, right? It's that idea of how can I transcend the cycle of birth and death, right? That's what that came out of the Milky Ocean on that day. And so instead of like blindly just going and buying gold or spending money, understand how the importance of this day, which is Dhanvantri, the god of Ayurveda, the lord of healing and Ayurveda, and deeper knowledge about health and your body, your existence. The vehicle on this planet that we all have is our body. That deeper knowledge of that body emerged on that day, and the Amrita is a symbolism for that, right? How do you live in this body for an extended period of time that he
Such
emerged?
an
So
important,
I think
such an
that's
important distinction.
something
Yeah. Yeah. As I say, such an important distinction to make that done
that,
also means wealth and
yeah,
value.
it's an important,
And the greatest value is health, because as soon as your health goes, it's hard to meditate and any of that other stuff. So, and again, everything that has done in it becomes, money, 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 money. We're so the greatest value, which is another word for done, is also a great word, is value, right? Is our
Mhm.
spiritual growth, our spiritual development. That's why we're here, particularly on these days, which are dark. These are dark days. The sun is getting darker. It's, it's Dakshinayana, where the sun is getting lower in the sky. We're heading toward winter. Things are, heading toward where there's going to be less vitality. And again, we live in this world now where there's lights everywhere and all, but back then it was like, okay, the darker days are coming. We're going to have to ride it out. There's less vitality. There's less Agni. There's less fire. And dropping into things like Ayurveda and these natural healing systems and the wealth of this knowledge and the value of this knowledge, not just the value of money, is very important. So, well, Dr. Malini Iyer, thank you for spending time with us. Your website is cosmicartandscience.com, right?
That's correct.
Cosmicartandscience.com. Definitely hit Malini up. She does great readings and all kinds of stuff. We'll have a link to her information as well. And again, great to see you again and to spend some time with you here. So thanks a lot. So go to rahuketu.net to attend the Rahu and Pisces Ketu in Virgo free web class. We're going to have this shift of Rahu going through Pisces and Ketu through Virgo. It'll be from November 29th, 2023 until the end of May of 2025. And I'm going to talk about what it means for your sign, the house axis from your chart, for the world based on past transits. So are you ready for that? What's going to happen? And again, as you can see here, I analyze the nodes, what they are, Rahu in Pisces, Ketu in Virgo. You see we have big eclipses coming up with this nodal axis, October 14th, 2023, and then also April 8th next year, and even further into 2025. So again, this is a great opportunity for you to really learn what this transit means. So go ahead and register rahuketu.net. Go to yourtruenaturevideos.com to get the Live Your True Nature 4-part video series. The first is called Your True Self, Your Cosmic Self, where we talk about the Atman, the Jiva Atman that comes down into the 9 planets of Lord Vishnu, how we incarnate. Then we look at our egoistic struggles in video 3, where we try to return back to the path home, the joyful and wise path home, in video 4. So again, yourtruenaturevideos.com. It's time to know yourself, not just believe in yourself. For a limited time, I'm offering 10 hours of masterclasses, Yoga and Vedic Astrology, Quantum Vedic Astrology, and Spiritual Astrology Masterclass. These are 3 great courses that will really help you a lot. Now, in case you don't know who I am, I taught the Astroved certification course, Dattatreya Shiva Baba, in 2010. Ravi Shankar published my book in 2018. I've been around for decades. I've been teaching these great classes, and if you go to VedicAstrologyEssentials.com, you can get this 90% off discount of these 3 great classes, more than 10 hours, guaranteed value. You can check this out. These 3 classes will give you all the necessary tools to begin to learn Vedic astrology. Please find me on YouTube at Sam Jeppy, Vedic Astrology Teacher. On there since 2007, thousands of hours of classes. Also on Facebook at Astrology Teacher, tons of articles updated regularly, and I'm on Instagram at Vedic Astrology 108, ongoing updates and interaction.